What's happening, guys? This is RRPG here, and I'm here to present another 2 cents video on the 2 cents block to you all. Nintendo, when are you going to realize that stuff you say is only going to come back and bite you hard in the ass? When are you going to realize that you are in a very hot spot when you are literally talking as if gamers are going to give your console a second chance? Seriously, it is stuff like this, of what I'm about to talk about, when there needs to be a heavy restructure within Nintendo of America, right now. What am I talking about, you might ask? Well, from having an interview with the Examiner, Nintendo of America's Executive Vice President of Sales, Scott Moffitt, talked about this console generation after being asked why Nintendo hasn't taken great strides to get the Wii U in the sales momentum that Sony has been doing with the PlayStation 4, and with Microsoft now starting to get on track with the Xbox One. First off, I want to say that when I caught a glimpse of this guy after being the main presenter of the Nintendo 3DS showcase at E3 2012, I thought this dude presented himself as a much better person than Reggie Fils-Aime, despite that presentation being not very good. However, my opinions may have changed because of this recent interview, as things are starting to become one and the same at Nintendo of America. I also want to go off the record and say that what Scott Moffitt says is only him trying to bring about a good image for Nintendo, and trying to make people see them in a much better light, whether if they agree or disagree with him. But what he says in this article just has me scratching my head with no stop, because Nintendo could have done so much better. Here's what he had to say. That's our real secret sauce, the Gamepad. It is the only real innovation in this console cycle. It's the only real new idea or game experience. And with Super Mario Maker, it shows you how magical it is to create levels with the Gamepad. It's also easy and intuitive. We've proven time and time again, we make great games. They get great user scores as well as critical scores. With games like Star Fox and Mario Maker, we are continuing to show the promise of the Gamepad, and candidly, early on, we probably didn't showcase the promise of the Gamepad as well as we could have. Also, he talks about how the developers within Nintendo seem to have now managed to fully exploit the controller to its full use, thanks to the likes of Super Mario Maker and Star Fox Zero, and this is what Moffitt had to say. As developers have gotten more comfortable with the technology, now you're seeing games that really leverage the power of the Gamepad. I think that will invite people to take a second look at Wii U. With Star Fox Zero, it's showing how the Gamepad can give you a different view into your game world. You are piloting the R-Wing, and you're getting a cockpit view on the Gamepad. I think those experiences may help us propel the system to new heights. When I look at this article, I can't help but feel that there are a couple of positives, while most of them are extremely negative from my point of view. Let us look at the positives first. What Scott Moffitt said about Nintendo making great games is indeed very true, as they have made many spectacular titles within the years they have been on the scene, whether if they are king or not. Some of those newer titles that they made during the Wii U's lifecycle had me really hook, line, and sinker because of how strong of a delivery that they were given, such as the Wonderful 101 by Platinum Games and Hyrule Warriors from Tecmo Koei and Team Ninja, and Omega Force too. Nintendo has something that not many other companies have, is great game design, and that continues to grow and get stronger with every single year when it comes to their first-party titles. The other positive is that Miiverse was something of a really great social network, as you could do all sorts of things such as showing pictures of your gameplay progress, videos of your gameplay, or even art pieces that you make with just the Gamepad or from a program like Art Academy Home Studio. When you look at those things from the standpoint of the general public, I think those things are really awesome to the consumer, as they can get together and bring about some of their greatest creations and memories through the games that they played. Anyway, those are all the positives I have, as I can go on and try to nitpick some other things that are great. But when you take a look at what truly stands out, then those are the only two that I can come up with. Now let us look at the negatives, as I have a lot of them on my plate. The first, foremost, and most obvious area I want to touch base upon is the claim that Scott Moffitt made in saying that the Gamepad is the only real innovation this console cycle. I'm sorry, but I smell complete BS in that statement. If the Wii U Gamepad is the only real innovation in this console generation, then why hasn't there been many games that actually took advantage of the Gamepad right at the get-go? There were only 2 titles that took advantage of the Gamepad with all of its use at the beginning, and they were Nintendo Land and Zombie U. You seemed like you were on the right track with the type of experiences you were going for within those games, with how they can revolutionize gaming with both the TV and Gamepad screen. But it only just went downhill from there, as there were maybe a small handful that actually did that, while you didn't do a great job at first, Nintendo. To this day, I believe that the only game that successfully used the gamepad to its full potential was The Wonderful 101 by Hideki Kamiya in Platinum Games, as it seemed that they were right on the game with how intuitive and addicting that the gameplay really is for using the touchscreen to do all sorts of things for an RTS action hybrid. Pikmin 3 was another great example, as well as Deus Ex Human Revolution Director's Cut, and Rayman Legends. But now it has completely fallen flat until now, where you have two games that are using them to their full potential once more. What you should have done with those first 2 years was to try and figure out many great ways to use the gamepad to its full capabilities, but you completely omit them in your most recent outings like Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. A great game, and probably my favorite that has come out in Nintendo as of recent, but it didn't use the gamepad at all, as it was either play on the TV or play on the gamepad because one of those screens would go blank if you played from either source. Mario Kart 8 didn't do much of that, as you only had a horn on the touchscreen and the gyros for turning, which felt very awkward. You didn't do anything for Hyrule Warriors, as it played much like any Warriors game from Tecmo Koei and Omega Force, but with nothing intuitive or created from the gamepad. Same thing for Bayonetta 2, as you only had the gamepad as an easier source for casuals who aren't that big into climax action or hack and slash games. Even Super Smash Bros. For the Wii U is guilty of not having anything cohesive for the gamepad, aside from the Amiibo toy line because of the near-field communications function on there. Other than that, nothing. Nada. Zip! Captain Toad Treasure Tracker didn't use the gamepad to its full capacity, as the only thing that was there was the Amiibo functionality, but that came after an update to reflect on the recent outing of Mario Party 10. Your most recent outings that are under your name has made its way into the market where they hardly use the gamepad to the fullest. But now you come out and say that the developers are now starting to figure things out when the Nintendo NX is going to launch in the next year or two? Are you fucking kidding me? There is no doubt about this. The Wii U is the PlayStation 3 of this console generation, as it seems that Nintendo is ready to abandon its ship. This is madness! Saying that there are plenty of Wii U games coming, but seeming that right now they are ready to jump ship to the NX when all they said was nothing but hype turned into baseless conjecture? I'm sorry, but the Wii U Gamepad isn't the only real innovation this console generation, as something like the PlayStation 4 share button was actually far more innovative as it was very simple and didn't become a huge hindrance to the player's gaming experience. You have so many games that made the Wii U Gamepad feel like it was very unnecessary, as you didn't stick to your guns all the way through. Instead, you put out those great games, but kept shoving down the tablet controller through our throats and made it seem like it was truly important, which it wasn't. To me, the Pro Controller should have been the main controller, as the system could have done really great without the need of the gamepad, where its potential hasn't been fully utilized from the very beginning, and many people raised the white flag and moved on. The Wii was a great success, but lightning doesn't always strike twice, guys. You want to know why you were king during the NES and SNES days, Nintendo? It is because you put the games first before the hardware, with making them far more innovative instead of trying to make them interactive with your consoles and your handhelds. The games held more innovation than the hardware when it came to both gameplay and presentation through its lifetime. Yes, the controller on the NES Famicom used was a huge step up from the Atari 2600, but it was simple and it got the message across. The presentation even got better near the console's end, where Rare made Battletoads and other games like Slalom that made it seem like they were far ahead of their time. Same thing can be said about the SNES Super Famicom. The games were far more innovative than just the hardware. The gameplay and presentation in the game came first for the innovation, then a controller that had 4 buttons on the right, a D-pad on the left, a start and select button in the middle, and 2 shoulder buttons on the top. That controller got the message across, and it was fantastic. It was simple and intuitive, too. With the games, ones that had big innovation in its gameplay were JRPGs like Chrono Trigger and Super Mario RPG, while ones in the presentation were aimed at games like Donkey Kong Country and Killer Instinct, as those games seemed like they took the SNES to newer heights that could age like wine, even to this day. The starting days of Mode 7 graphics made you a truly dominating figure for most of your games and the ones that came from the third-party companies. With Silicon Graphics after that, you were taking the system to newer heights perhaps that one would never thought possible on a console that is more 2D-eccentric. After that, what happened? Your reign as king took a massive nosedive, and it hasn't reached back to the top ever since. Sure, the Wii managed to make you king of the 7th generation of gaming because of the sales, but where was the same amount of first and third-party support that we have seen since your past? What happened to the innovation within the software? There wasn't any of that, as you made some substantial improvements in your hardware during the N64 and the GameCube, but you went the whole 9 yards and started to go the complete opposite of what made you great all those years ago. You are trying to make the hardware more innovative and not the games, as you are relying on gimmicks to sell your hardware, but not just on your software itself. That is why I feel the heart in your content is completely lost, because you feel that you need to make your games incorporate the gimmicks of the Wii, DS, Wii U, and 3DS, because you lost faith in innovating your IPs from a gameplay and presentation standpoint. Super Mario 64 comes out on the Nintendo 64. Fantastic game! Great gameplay because of the control stick on the controller, as it really was useful, and great presentation for having a 3D field with great water effects in some areas. Super Mario Sunshine hits the scene. Fantastic game! Great gameplay with the water pack on the back of Mario, as it was used for all sorts of things instead of just primarily being a full-on collectathon. The presentation was no slouch either. The water effects were far more impressive, as well as other things within the presentation. Super Mario Galaxy comes out, and it is the only exception that I feel that both the controller as well as the gameplay and presentation complemented each other really well, and its sequel struck gold with the same results as before. After that, Super Mario games after Super Mario Galaxy 2 have become somewhat underwhelming, as nothing creative in the gameplay or presentation came into mind. Same thing for the Zelda games on consoles. Skyward Sword was a great game for its gameplay, story, and presentation, but was using the Wiimote and Nunchuck to interact with the experience truly necessary? Saying that you won't go back to some of your dormant IPs like F-Zero, Kid Icarus, Star Tropics, or even Metroid because you can't think of anything to utilize the hardware and controllers, but not innovating from just a gameplay and presentation standpoint? I'm sorry, Nintendo. With going through that initiative like what you are doing right now has painted a huge picture that you have truly lost faith in your IPs, because you want to make your games interactive just so they can still feel relevant to your eyes. You don't have to do anything like that, as coming up with ideas for the gameplay and presentation can sometimes warrant that as innovative and revolutionary, as a controller meant to be interactive with the entire game isn't the route that everyone wants to see, as they have moved on from that. When you have a console, just make it traditional, and bring that magic back with what made your game so great back then, because the Wii and DS era of gaming are done. It's time to move on. At the end of the day, I just feel that Nintendo not using the Wii U Gamepad to its full potential since the beginning, and saying that they are finally doing so for their games right now, shouldn't be a legitimate excuse that they have waited way too long to do this, when many people don't plan on coming back to the system when it really hasn't done that much to give it that push it needs in console sales. Software sales are good, yes, but this lack of faith in the IP itself without the use of a piece of hardware to make things interactive makes Scott Moffitt's claim about the gamepad being the only real innovation in this console generation being completely irrelevant and doesn't hold any merit whatsoever. Star Fox Zero can still be a great game without the need of a second screen, as Star Fox Assault was like the appetizer to the main dish, but ended up tasting bad because of the confusing and horrible controls. Super Mario Maker may indeed be a great game for its use of the gamepad from what I see, but your other games coming out like Devil's Third, Yoshi's Woolly World, Xenoblade Chronicles X, Mario Tennis Ultra Smash, and Shin Megami Tensei Cross Fire Emblem don't seem to do it that much when those games release, as you should have made those games more focused on core gamers with only the Pro Controller. Since I am on YouTube amongst the hundreds and millions of users who are gamers on the site who will end up buying the Nintendo NX, we just expect that it doesn't try to overcomplicate itself like what you are currently doing with the Wii U. If the NX comes out and it actually goes in the same route as the Wii U, but only makes things worse, I will criticize you for making the same mistake over again. I really do hope you are going to rectify your mistakes when it comes to the Wii U successor, but you have my silent oath that if it follows the same direction as the Wii U, where the hardware has more priority over the software when it comes to innovation, then I'm going to tell people. I bought the Wii U and supported you in hoping that things could turn out for the better. But your recent actions had made me a disbeliever because of how you are taking things way too fast and not thoroughly planned out. Be warned that I will tell people that the NX is bad if you end up pulling the same crap you did this generation, regardless if I really like you as a company or not. I don't want you to go away because you are a very important part of this industry, Nintendo. However, if you keep this up with going this radical direction with no stop in sight, then I'm afraid for bad things to happen to you. You don't need to stay in this loop forever, as you deserve better than where you are right now. That is the lesson of this video as to what I said in my other videos that I supported Nintendo for their decisions. But since they haven't done so well to make themselves largely relevant like they once were, then I would call them out for stuff like this. And I did. Everyone, including Sony and Microsoft as a company, should receive its fair share of constructive criticism for this, because they all equally are bad when it comes to the decisions that they made. If we want to see all three do better, then they need to set their pride aside and give what the gamers want. Sony and Microsoft, in my eyes, have done well as of recent with the games they currently have and are about to be brought out by them and third parties. But I hope one day that Nintendo will follow suit so that all three are just as equally great and not one being better over the other. Competition is good for all three sides, but when one falters, then it becomes a huge problem. No question about it. Anyway, enough of my talk on this, as I want to hear your own 2 cents on Scott Moffitt's words. Do you agree with him in saying that the Wii U Gamepad is the only innovative thing this console generation, or do you feel that something else was? Make sure to rate this video as well as leaving your positive and negative feedback down in the comments. Also, be sure to hit that subscribe button underneath the video, as more support from you guys will mean that more content is coming from me in the future that you won't find anywhere else. Until next time, this is Double RPG signing off by saying Godspeed and game on, gamers. Have a good one.